Branding isn't just a logo, it's a mindset. A holistic approach shaping identities, experiences, and leadership at every level. Welcome to BrandsTalk with your host, Brigitte Bojkowszky, where excellence meets purpose. We share insights and lessons to inspire and elevate. Let's dive in. Today's episode is one of those conversations that speak directly to the core of transformation. Behind every powerful brand is a human being who has faced herself and chosen to rise. My guest today, Karen Bashford, is an intuitive mentor, author, and creator of transformational tools that help women reconnect with their worth, break free from self-sabotage, and step into authentic self-leadership. Her own story, one marked by childhood neglect, abusive relationships, and illness, became the very foundation of her purpose to guide others from pain to power, from silence to self-trust. Karen's work beautifully bridges the spiritual and the practical, helping women understand not just what needs to change, but why they have been stuck and how to move forward with clarity, courage, and compassion. In our conversation today, we'll explore what it truly means to lead yourself. Why transformation isn't about fixing who you are, but remembering who you have always been and slowing down. Yes, slowing down can become a powerful act of branding and leadership. So grab your coffee, take a breath, and join us as we dive into this deeply human and empowering conversation with Karen Bashford. Welcome, Karen. Welcome to my show, BrandsTalk.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to this too, because I see so many commonalities that we share. There's so much alignment, and I would love to dive deeper in your perspective and where you are coming from. Karen, your personal journey from trauma and illness to empowerment is deeply moving. I would love you to share a little bit about it and how this life experience shaped not just who you are today, but the brand, the true essence of who you are, the brand that you have built around transformation and leadership.
Okay, so let's start with my nervous breakdown, because I actually had a nervous breakdown in 2023. And that meant literally I had to totally surrender. And in surrendering, I then discovered things about myself that as a woman, I acknowledge most of us experience, and that is playing small, not being seen, deliberately holding ourselves back because we don't know we are. However, the journey actually started when my parents were carrying through the same thing they were taught, which is not to tell me they loved me or to actually hug me. And we do not realize that is actually neglect according to the child companies that deal with child abuse. It's actually classed as neglect. And therefore, if you receive that neglect as a child, it will continue through your life. But I only came to realize when I was just turned 50 that I actually hadn't been hugged or told I was loved by my parents. And that came about because we always had the answers within us, but we need to ask the question. And I was working with a coach, and she said to me, what was the one thing that you would love most in your life if you could make it happen? And my comment was, out the blue, to hear my parents tell me they loved me and actually gave me a hug that was a hug, not just a, oh, okay, goodbye hug. There was real feeling behind it. And that just came out the blue. But that changed everything for me. In the sense of I realized I had been behaving differently with my friends and with the people I worked with, in the sense of I always gave them a hug. I would always tell my friends I loved them. But it never occurred to me that I hadn't received that from my parents because it was so normal.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And also, that was really hitting home to me is we need to ask the questions and that we all have the answers in us. So I think we really should. Why don't we ask ourselves these questions? I don't know. How do we get there to ask that question?
I think for me personally, it was taking time out, which was what the nervous breakdown was all about. I'm so grateful I had that nervous breakdown because it made me pause, it made me look at my life, and it made me ask the questions. Why was I behaving as I was? Why was life always going wrong for me? Why did I have those boom and bust moments? Or why was it I had an abusive relationship with my husband, but then I went into an even more abusive relationship with my partner? What was it that was causing me to do that? And everything I discovered on that journey to recovering from my nervous breakdown was it went back to how I saw myself and what I believed in myself that I had created as a child. Because how our parents are towards us, what we experience in childhood becomes those behaviors, those beliefs, those habits that we create that unless we question, we will continue repeating them. So my partners were people who basically had not been loved themselves. And it's very true, like attracts like. Because I was looking for love, but the love I was looking for was absent. So I choose partners that had also been through childhood with love being absent. And when I say love being absent, yes, there was love from my parents, but it was never expressed in the way that I needed to hear it. I'm very much about a touch. I love hugs, but I never got them. I'm also very much about confirming to myself as much as to anyone else how I'm feeling or what I need. My need was to be loved, but I didn't receive that love in a way that was recognizable to me. So consequently, I found partners that didn't know how to give me that love.
When we don't know what to ask. And I think it's also about really excavating to the core of we truly are to figure that out. And that leads us to ask these questions and then having someone helping us to find the answer and to get there, the answers that we have in us. I would like to get into the next interesting question and somehow relates to that because you also often talk about the power of self-leadership. From your perspective, what does it truly mean to lead yourself? Because we only can lead others once we are able to lead ourselves first. And how does that form the foundation for building a strong, authentic identity, a strong, authentic personality, personal brand for us?
Well, as we know, branding is very much about us as a person. Even as a business, our input into that business, especially as an entrepreneur, is very relevant. So unless you know your values and what you live by and what you're willing to accept within your life and how you're willing to behave, how can you then tell somebody else or share with somebody else, this is how to lead? This is what you need to be doing to be true to what you want to achieve, but also true to how you want to serve. And that also comes with boundaries, because if you don't know your own boundaries of what is acceptable, of how you want people to show up for you, how you want to show up for somebody, how can you possibly really lead in a way that's authentic? Because if you've not got boundaries, you're going to constantly shift and change how you behave, how you react, and actually what you're thinking at times. So you're creating a mismatch constantly because you don't know yourself. And everything about leadership begins with knowing yourself. If you don't know yourself, how can you genuinely lead somebody else? Because they're potentially looking at you to show them the way. And how can you show them the way if you're not true to yourself and constantly are shifting and changing your attitudes, how you respond, your behaviors even? You could be doing something one day that was blatantly out of alignment with what you've said the previous day. That's going to cause confusion. And that's not leadership. The last thing you want to do in leadership is create confusion.
I want to come back to this really interesting phrase because you said remembering ourselves, and you said transformation isn't about fixing ourselves. It's about remembering who we truly are. So it's getting to the core of who we truly are. And it's such a profound statement. And it aligns so much with my work. How does that perspective change, from your perspective, the way women approach their personal and professional identity, their brand of being?
Okay, well, if you go along believing that you need to be fixed, that's something that you have decided externally. Because we're told so many things. We're basically expected to behave in certain ways. That's not you. We all have our individual personalities, our characters that come to the fore. I have a really wicked sense of humor, but that rarely came out prior to my nervous breakdown. And yet I had friends saying to me, "Oh, Karen, that was brilliant." And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what did I say? Because it was just coming out in that moment. But it wasn't until I truly spent the time understanding how I thought, what I believed, and how I wanted to show up as me, and consequently as my business, did I fully appreciate that I had a wicked sense of humor. I could be quite on spot, on time with my response. And that created a totally different atmosphere and response from the people I was speaking with or being on stage with and sharing, because I was actually coming back to who I was and not going along with the belief that I couldn't be out there. I couldn't be bold. I couldn't be funny because it wasn't acceptable. And in your identity, it's these personal little characters. I often relate it to, like, with the sloth or beaver. Sloth being that slow growth, and obviously it's my coaching toolkit that I've created. But sloth is that slow growth. It's everything we learn from other people as children, that we witness, that we decide, and from our experiences that we're not worthy. that we don't deserve, we're not good enough, or I can't have, I must do, I should. All those are the character of the sloth, that slow build that we have as a child into adulthood. And they become programmed. And until you're aware of those programs, until you review how your parents behaved or ancestral history, it can be cultural. If you're born in Africa and come to the UK, that's a massive cultural shift. So you're carrying the knowledge of your parents and that country you come from, and then suddenly you walk into a totally different country, and with all their different cultures, there is going to be a mismatch. You're carrying that as part of you, whether you came here as an adult or whether you came here as a child. You will be carrying that information, and that is programmed in your subconscious, is part of who you are. And you're going to rely on that knowledge to live as an adult. And until you actually become the beaver who beaves away at finding all those beliefs that you hold, the cultural history, the family, ancestral behaviors, even ancestral illnesses will come through. So until you actually get to know yourself well enough, how do you know your true identity? How do you know how you're going to lead authentically? Because you're not going to know what you're automatically doing. You're only going to be aware of what you're doing automatically when you question. And then when you question, you can start to change, because you will have that awareness and the answers to choose differently. And that is where true branding comes from, because you're being true to you as a person, not something that's come to you externally, but comes from within, from your heart. Because we always have, if we're true to ourselves, the honesty, the practicalities that come from leading ourselves.
That's interesting, because you mentioned when we are coming from a different culture and move to the UK, let's say to London, we come with all this cultural mindset and with our upbringing, with our conditioning, and then we need to align and also mold into a new cultural context. So how do you do that? Can you give us a stepwise approach to that, splitting it up and see, okay, what are the stages? Because I think since we are living in a global world, in a cross-cultural world, where we also need to get along and mingle and work together in organizations with people from different cultural contexts, because it also comes in here. So how do we best handle that? How do we lead work and even brand ourselves in this new context?
I think we all can come into a different environment. Even when we go on holiday, we can become consciously aware of how people are behaving. But we also need to be conscious of the fact that obviously certain religions play a part in our lives if we've come from different environments. I know in the UK we have a diversity of religions, but we have to take into account that not everyone has our same viewpoint of life, or how we should be behaving, or even what is acceptable. And it's having that conscious awareness there is a difference. And it's learning to respect that nobody is the same as you. And you have to honor that fact that even though you bring things into you from a different country, or if you go to visit a different country, your attitudes are going to be different. So it's having the respect to appreciate that actually I'm me, they are them. So what do I need to be aware of? And it is taking the time to observe. How do people behave when they greet themselves? Each other. How do they behave in certain circumstances? It only takes a moment for us to observe something. If you start to do that before you even start opening your mouth, you will start to show more respect. You will not create a mismatch. And this is so important. We have so many conflicts because there is a mismatch, because we do not bother to understand each other. So it is about taking that slow pause to just observe, to be aware, and then decide what you're going to do or how you're going to respond.
That is a beautiful segue into my next question. And you're so right. It's about observing first. It's about listening first. And that also means we need to slow down. The world is obsessed with speed. Yeah, we are living in this world, especially as a corporate, you're living this rat race. So slowing down feels almost radical. So how do you explain someone who is in this busy, fast-moving world? How do you tell someone that stillness and reflection are essential? Not only for having a good climate, like an organizational culture and work style, but also for yourself, of course. Yeah. So how do you tell them? How do you guide them there that actually stillness brings along the power that you need going forward and the energy that you need going forward? How do you do that?
Okay, so my first comment would be, if you look at your life and all the things that you want to achieve, how are you going to do that if you're constantly busy? Because one of the things we have to realize is our body needs to rest. To be at the optimum output, you need to rest. You're not going to do that if your mind is constantly on the go 24/7. You're not going to do that if you only get 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night and it's disturbed sleep. It's not going to happen if you sit in front of your laptop and are eating at the same time as working. To really, truly make the most of your life, you have to recognize your body knows what it needs. And the one thing that we forget is to listen to our bodies. I'm not talking about your mind, I'm talking about your body. Your body will clearly indicate when it wants to rest. You'll find things aren't going as well as you want to. You'll find that you get mistakes coming up that are so blatantly obvious they shouldn't have occurred. But that is your body going, but I can't deal with this anymore. Or you'll start finding you get aches and pains coming through. Your body is telling you, I'm hurting, I can't deal with this, I need to rest. You start finding that you don't recover as well from exercise, perhaps, because you've been pushing your body too much. You could find that food doesn't taste as nice as it used to. And that's because your body's going, you're not giving me the right food. Please, can I have the right food? Because we forget that if we're overstressed from being too busy, our body doesn't know how to slow down and rest. And we need to rest. So it's listening to what our bodies are telling us. It's observing what's really going on within our environment. So it could be something as simple as sitting looking out the window and thinking, oh, it's a nice day, and feeling in your body that you want to go out and enjoy that day. But instead you say, no, I've got to finish this. That is not the way for you to live life. So in taking a moment to just listen and observe how you're actually feeling while you're working will make a big difference to how you actually live a happy and healthy life.
Going in introspection, listen, yeah, and giving ourselves the permission, okay, it's a beautiful day. And if it's somehow possible, yeah, leave the work behind, go take a walk, an hour or something, then come back. You're fresh. And I think, and that's what I do. It's hard. It's hard sometimes, but I'm much faster and much more creative when I do. Yeah. And you describe your work as a bridge between the practical and the spiritual. So, how does that integration help women from self sabotage, from saying, I'm not good enough, from holding themselves back for whatever reason or for being too much, into self trust? How can we get into that self trust? And how might this balance influence how we as women or they show up as leaders and entrepreneurs?
Okay, so listening involves slowing down. And when you slow down, you give yourself a chance to listen to your own inner wisdom, to your intuition. We forget that we are born as a soul, and therefore our soul is capable of communicating with us. But we can only listen to what we allow ourselves to listen to if we quieten the noise that's constantly going on around us and in our lives. So the spiritual aspect is giving yourself permission to stop repeating all that noise that you have created as a child. And those are the beliefs of I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm not allowed to do this, or anything else. It's only in acknowledging those thoughts are not necessary. Now, that for some women is a real challenge because they are so automatically programmed to keep those thoughts in mind. So if they come in, you can simply turn around and say, I'm not listening to you. I'm choosing to be quiet for a moment. I'm choosing to actually believe in myself. And the more we say no to those thoughts, that noise that's constantly going on, the more we realize that actually there is a power behind us that allows us to truly be ourselves. And in that, we then can take practical steps. Instead of constantly trying to figure out what to do, we actually know what to do. There is this knowing within ourselves, this acknowledgement that I don't listen to outside information anymore. I can actually listen to it, but then I can actively choose how to respond to it. And that's the practical aspect of it. Because when we actually choose ourselves, we take different actions. We don't have to constantly seek approval from external sources. We don't have to listen to other people saying, oh, but if you do it this way, it's best. We know what's best for ourselves if only we listened to our intuition, to the side of us that has the ability to guide us in ways that open us up to so much more than what we can possibly have if we continue to allow our critical voice to speak to us.
Very often these external forces, what other people say, it's so ingrained in our subconscious belief. So how do we rewrite that? How can we go from this being invisible and small to powerful and to dare? And how can I trust what needs to happen that I can really switch, rewrite, reframe that narrative into the believing? This inner, to tap into this inner wisdom of what I truly feel inside, this is right. How can I make this happen?
Well, you can question yourself, and I am all very much about questioning. Even now, despite everything I've done for myself, I would always ask intuitively. And you can do that literally by acknowledging the thoughts that you're having and saying, is this true? And then allowing yourself to feel how your body feels. Your body is such an amazing communicator. So if it's what you're asking, am I not good enough? Or am I good enough? You can actually sit quietly and feel where in your body there is a physical response. It can be a tiny feeling of a butterfly moving through your heart. Or it could be your heart goes, oh, I don't like this. Or it could be your gut going, oh, I don't feel right. But asking yourself, is this true? Or is this something I really want to do? And allowing yourself those quiet moments. And it doesn't take much. With practice, you can start to realize just how much your body is stating, this is not for me, or I like this. This is good. Can we go for this? But it is having to take that time, which is where the pausing and slowing down comes in. And you're not going to do that if you've got a very busy mind and you've decided that life has to happen at 100 miles an hour. You
Yeah.
have to put the brakes on. And then when you start to put the brakes on, you start to realize you can hear your own body and your own intuition. You don't have to listen to all that negative information that you've taken on that is so untrue to you. Because it's not your take on life, it's somebody else's. And why would you live somebody else's life?
Yeah, it's so interesting what you're saying because that ultimately also leads to more confidence. Because when you're playing small, when you're holding yourself back, you feel unworthy, your self-confidence is low, right? So
Mm.
self-acceptance is also the
Mhm.
path to more confidence. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because we always see confidence as something that is bold, and your work suggests more, it's born from also compassion and self acceptance. So, can you elaborate a little bit on that and how we can use that as a strategic advantage in leadership and in branding?
Okay, so for me, outwardly, before my nervous breakdown, I would appear confident. I would appear confident. But there was always a part of me going, yeah, but you're not good enough. You're seriously not good enough, Karen. Why would anyone believe you? Or, yeah, but you've proven already that you can do this, but that's a fluke. That would be always playing out in the background. When you start to slow down and acknowledge that the programs, the information, the self-sabotage that you're doing, and self-sabotage can be the smallest little thing of drinking massive amounts of coffee when you should be drinking water. And if you're not hydrated, your mind and body can't work properly. It needs water. And you are 70, I think it's 73% water. So if you're drinking coffee, dehydrates you. So how can your body actually and your mind work effectively? So it's having the, how would I put it? It's feeling that every little step you take is a step towards being you. So if you continually revert back to the old behaviors or the old beliefs, you're then ignoring yourself. And as a woman, we have a tendency to forget that we are just as important. We constantly give. We constantly put ourselves on the back burners. We're constantly seeking to impress when we don't need to impress. So to build your confidence is to acknowledge that you matter the most. Because as you gain confidence, you realize that you can give more. And that confidence comes from believing that you are deserving of being yourself, that you are deserving of not having to give to others all the time, that you can give to yourself. And every time that you give to yourself, your body and mind are starting to acknowledge you as a person. And every time you take another step forward, it's not about being uncomfortable in your comfort zone. It's about taking that tiny step that allows you to realize you are a person. You're not a machine. You're not a robot. You've not having to accept those programs that have been given to you. You can change them. And in changing them, you start to realize you are special. You are unique. And you deserve to be that person. And it starts to build. Every tiny step you take starts to build that confidence in you. And you start to realize you are that special person. And why shouldn't you claim it?
Yeah, Karen, thank you so much. Yeah, Karen, you are that beautiful, shining person. You are living your true essence, I can say that. And my question to you now, if your personal brand, your true essence, that's what you are at your core, could leave one lasting imprint on the world, one message that women everywhere would remember, what would that be?
Oh, there's so many of them. What would I choose?
Oh, give us 2 or 3 messages.
Okay. As a woman, you have always been classed as a second-class citizen. That's how it's been, because women have been seen to be the weaker race. But if you look at a woman and what she does, she gives birth to children. How can she be a second-class citizen? And even if you've never given birth to a child, you've given birth to so many ideas, so many actions that encourage others to do better. It's time we stood up and shouted our worth to the world.
It's very beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are at the end. But before we wrap up, I would love to end with a fun, rapid fire session. So I'll throw out a few terms and you share the first thought or phrase that comes to mind.
Yeah.
All right? Good. Mindset,
Don't think.
authenticity,
True.
leadership,
Self.
intuition,
Trust.
podcast.
Listening.
What do you understand by a brand? What does a brand mean to you?
It's all of those that I've just shared. It's very much expressing who you are and allowing others to see your truth.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much. Karen, where can listeners find you and get in touch with you?
Okay, well, you can find me at KarenBashford.com, or you can always find me on LinkedIn as Karen Bashford, the Empowered. Oh, I forgot the empowerment coach, I think it is. I forgot what the actual ending is, but if you look for Karen Bashford, you'll find me.
Everything is going to be in the show notes. Karen, thank you so much for being my guest today on BrandsTalk and sharing with us your story, your approach to transformation. And I think the powerful reminder that true transformation doesn't come from becoming someone new, but from remembering who we have always been. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow on your favorite app, share it with your network, and leave a quick review. Stay tuned for the next episode and keep shining.